do not look at me like that. I noticed it before you did. There is something different about the way you walk into a room now. Something quieter, something that does not apologize anymore. And I will tell you something funny. The people around you, the ones who loved you when you were small, when you were soft, when you were easy to hold, they are uncomfortable. Ha! Not scared, not angry, uncomfortable. And that, my dear, is the most dangerous thing a person can become. Someone who no longer makes sense inside the story other people wrote for them. I know that feeling. I have lived inside that feeling like a man who sleeps in a burning house and calls it warmth. So sit with me a moment, because what I am about to tell you is not about me. Oh no, it is about you and the version of yourself you have been quietly burying alive. I remember the exact moment you decided to become palatable. You were young. Someone laughed at the wrong thing. Your laugh, your idea, your honesty. And instead of letting it sting and pass, you filed it away, like evidence, like a quiet little courtroom you built inside your chest where every embarrassing moment got a life sentence. And from that day forward, you started editing yourself, word by word, reaction by reaction, slowly trimming every sharp edge that made people flinch until what was left was something smooth, something agreeable, something that fit perfectly inside everyone else's comfort. Oh, and they loved that version of you. They really did. You are so easy to be around, they would say, and you would smile, not realizing that was not a compliment. That was a leash. I know how it starts. I know because I did the opposite, and they never forgave me for it. I kept every sharp edge. I sharpened them, actually. I polished them until they caught the light just right. And the world looked at me and called me mad. Ha! Funny, is it not, how the man who refuses to shrink becomes the villain, and the man who disappears completely becomes the hero. I used to wonder about that. Used to sit in rooms that smelled like antiseptic and old paper and ask myself, which one of us is actually broken? The one who screams, or the one who has forgotten he ever had a voice? Here is what nobody tells you about becoming easy to be around. It does not stop. You give an inch of yourself away, and they will stand there, hand outstretched, waiting for the next inch. And you will give it, because somewhere along the way, their comfort became more familiar to you than your own name. I watched it happen to someone once, a man, quiet, careful, hands always folded, always the first to apologize in an argument he did not start. I just do not want any trouble, he would say. And I would look at him and see something that made me feel a strange, hollow ache somewhere behind my ribs. Not pity, worse than pity, recognition. Because here is the twist you were not expecting. I was not always this. There was a version of me that folded his hands too, that swallowed the sharp things and smiled over the wound. That learned very early that being too much meant being alone. So I made myself less, and less, and less. Until one day I looked in the mirror, and the face looking back was a stranger's. Calm, composed, acceptable. And something inside me, something old and raw and furious, looked at that stranger's face and started to laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was the only honest thing left in the room. So when I look at you now, and I see that same careful posture, that same measured laugh, that same split-second hesitation before you say what you actually think, I am not judging you. Oh no. I am recognizing you. And that is far more unsettling than judgment ever could be, because judgment comes from the outside. But recognition means I have been exactly where you are standing, and I know what lives on the other side of that door you are too afraid to open. They will tell you it is love. That is the first thing you need to understand. The people who need you small, who need you predictable, who panic quietly every time you grow an inch they did not approve, they will frame it as concern. I am just worried about you. I do not recognize you anymore. You have changed. Oh, yes. Yes, you have. And the only reason that sentence lands like an accusation instead of a compliment is because to them it is one. I had a woman tell me once, voice soft, eyes careful, I just want the old you back. And I stood very still, the way you stand when something dangerous is happening slowly. The old me, I said, and I could feel the laugh rising in my throat like smoke. You mean the one who never disagreed with you? She did not answer. She did not have to. The silence did it for her. And that silence taught me more about love than any word she ever said. Because here is the thing about people who love your limitations. They are not loving you. They are loving the space you leave for them. The quiet, the compliance, the way you dim yourself just enough that they can finally feel bright. I have watched people do it my entire life. Surround themselves with smaller flames so they can pretend they are the sun. Ha! And the saddest part, the part that makes me laugh in that low, hollow way that used to frighten people, is that the smaller flames let them. They cup their hands around their own light and blow it out themselves. Call it humility. Call it kindness. Call it love. Give it any name you want. Extinguishing yourself by any other name is still darkness. Now here is where it shifts, and I need you to stay with me, because this is the part most people miss. You think the discomfort other people feel around you now is about you, your tone, your boundaries, your refusal to laugh at the joke that was always aimed at you. But it is not about you. It has never been about you. That discomfort, that particular squirming, restless discomfort they cannot quite name, is the feeling of a mirror suddenly showing them something they did not consent to see. You stopped shrinking. And now every person who built their confidence on your smallness is standing in a room that no longer has the right furniture. Oh, I find that exquisite. Truly, there is an art to it. The moment a person realizes the version of you they depended on has quietly left the building. No announcement, no dramatic exit, no slammed doors, just absence. The shape of someone who used to fold themselves into whatever was needed. Gone. Replaced by something that stands at its full height and does not apologize for the shadow it casts. I remember the first time I walked into a room and did not check what people's faces were doing. I was maybe 23, maybe less. There was a smell in that room. Cigarette smoke and cheap cologne, and underneath it, something older. Fear. Not mine. Theirs. And I realized, standing there in that particular quality of silence, that every performance I had ever put on for other people's comfort had been a gift I gave freely to people who never once said thank you. So I stopped giving it. Just like that. No grand decision. No war inside my head. I simply closed the gift shop, and the ones who truly loved me, oh, there were not many. I will not lie to you about that. The ones who truly did stayed anyway, confused perhaps, a little disoriented, but there. And the rest, the ones who needed the performance, the softness, the careful, careful, careful version of me, they left. And here is the twist that will sit with you longer than you expect. I let them. Not because I did not feel it. I felt it the way you feel a tooth being pulled, that deep bone-level ache that has nothing to do with the surface. But I let them go because keeping them would have cost me something I could not afford to lose, the last honest thing I had left, myself. And now I am looking at you, standing at that same edge, that same terrifying, quietly thrilling edge. And I want to ask you something I have never asked anyone, not out of cruelty, not out of theater, but out of that strange, rare thing I feel only once in a very long while. Genuine curiosity. What are you so afraid they will find if you finally stop hiding it? Fear has a smell. Most people do not know that. They think fear is a feeling, something internal, something private, something you can tuck away behind a steady voice and a rehearsed smile. But I know better. I have spent enough time in enough rooms with enough people wearing enough masks to know that fear seeps through, always. It comes out in the laugh that is just a half second too fast, in the eye contact that breaks just a half second too soon, in the way a person fills silence like it is a wound that needs covering. And you, oh, you have been bleeding quietly for a very long time. I want to tell you something about silence, real silence, not the absence of noise, the absence of performance. The first time I truly sat in it, I was in a room with a single bulb overhead, the kind that hums like it is in pain. No audience, no script, no version of myself constructed for someone else's comfort. Just me, and the things I had never let myself think in rooms full of people. And I will tell you, it was the most violent experience of my life. Not because it hurt, because it did not. For the first time in longer than I could remember, nothing hurt, and I did not know what to do with a self that was not in pain. Because here is the thing about people like us, and yes, I am saying us, and I need you to sit with that. We become so fluent in discomfort that comfort starts to feel like a trap, like something is about to go wrong. Like the quiet is just the pause before someone decides you are too much again. So we stay braced, always braced, shoulders carrying something that was put down years ago by the person who put it there. But somehow it never left our backs. Funny how that works. The people who hurt you go home. Sleep easy, wake up and pour their coffee and move through their days without a single thought of the weight they handed you at the door. And you carry it like a duty, like loyalty, like love. I carried something once, a small thing, really, a playing card bent at the corner, ink slightly smeared where a thumb had pressed too hard. Not mine originally. It belonged to a man who told me very plainly, very calmly, the way dangerous people always speak calmly. Nobody will ever take you seriously. He said it the way you say the weather, no malice in his voice, no heat, just the flat certainty of a man who had decided what I was before I ever opened my mouth. And I kept that card, not as a wound, as a reminder of how confidently people announce the ceilings they have built inside their own heads and then expect you to live under them. Now here is the twist, the one that is emotional, the one that will cost you something to hear. That man was not a villain. He was not cruel in the way stories need villains to be cruel. He was ordinary. He was tired. He was small in all the ways that do not show up on the outside, and his smallness needed company. So he tried to recruit me. And the most honest thing I can tell you, the thing that aches even now, even after everything, is that for a long time I almost let him. Not because I believed him, but because being believed in by the wrong person still feels in the moment like being believed in. And I was so hungry for it, so terrifyingly, embarrassingly, achingly hungry for it. That hunger, I see it in you, not as weakness. Do not mistake me. I see it as evidence. Evidence that you have been in rooms too long where the people could not see you, and instead of leaving, you tried harder to be visible. You spoke louder, worked longer, gave more, bent further. And every time the recognition did not come, or came in the wrong shape, the shape of being used instead of being seen, you told yourself it was your fault, that you had not given enough yet. Oh, that is the cruelest trick loneliness ever plays. It dresses itself up as a personal failing. I stopped trying to be visible to people who were determined to look through me. It was not noble. It was not therapeutic. It was not a decision I made in a quiet moment of self-realization. It was survival, the rawest, most animal kind. The kind where something inside you simply refuses, quietly, finally, irrevocably, to go one more round. And in that refusal, in that small, exhausted, magnificent no, something shifted. Not in the world, not in the people who had never seen me. In me. Something old and patient and terrifyingly awake opened one eye, and for the first time in a very long time, smiled. And that smile, not the performed one, not the one I wore like armor, not the one that kept people at a comfortable distance, that real one, the one that came from somewhere I had almost forgotten existed. That was the beginning, not of madness, not of chaos, of something far more unsettling to the people around me. Clarity. And clarity, I have learned, is the thing people fear most in someone they thought they understood. Because a person in pain is predictable. A person in pain stays. But a person who has finally, quietly, permanently stopped hurting, that person could do absolutely anything. Let me tell you what clarity actually costs. Because everyone romanticizes it. They say it like it is a sunrise. Something golden, something warm, something that arrives gently and makes everything prettier. Ha! Clarity is not a sunrise. Clarity is a surgeon's light, cold, precise, utterly indifferent to what it illuminates. And when it finally falls on the life you have been living, on the relationships you have been maintaining, on the version of yourself you have been performing, it does not make things prettier. It makes things true. And truth, I have found, is the loneliest country on earth. I remember the first conversation I had after I stopped pretending. Not stopped pretending to be happy. That is a small thing. People do that every Tuesday. I mean, stopped pretending to be safe. Stopped rounding my edges for the comfort of people in the room. It was a short conversation. The other person did most of the talking, and at the end, they looked at me, really looked, the way people look when the script has gone wrong, and said very quietly, "I do not know who you are anymore." And I looked back, and I said, "No, you finally do." The silence after that was extraordinary. There is a particular kind of person who needs you confused, not broken, confused. Broken people are easy to manage. You can point at them, feel superior, feel useful, hand them the language of their own limitations, and watch them accept it gratefully. But confused people, people who are asking questions, people who are starting to notice the gaps between what they were told and what they actually feel, those people make certain other people very, very nervous. Because a confused person is still searchable, still manageable, still one good conversation away from being redirected back into the shape that was always more convenient for someone else. But a person with clarity, a person who has stopped searching outside themselves for the answer to a question only they can answer, that person cannot be redirected, cannot be confused back into compliance. And that is the tactical twist I need you to understand, is why they call it a problem. Your clarity is not a problem. It is a threat, not to anyone's safety, not to anyone's well-being. A threat to a system, a quiet, invisible, completely unspoken system that only works if you do not notice it. The system that says keep your voice at this volume, keep your ambitions at this height, keep your questions inside these approved categories. And in return, we will call you stable. We will call you good. We will hand you just enough belonging to make the cost feel worth it. I refused that contract a long time ago. Not heroically, messily, loudly, in ways I am not entirely proud of, but I refused it. And every person who had co-signed it on my behalf without asking felt that refusal like a personal betrayal. Funny how that works too. When you stop agreeing to a deal you never made, somehow you are the one who broke something. Now here is the part I have never said out loud. The part that costs me something to admit. There were moments, long ones, quiet ones, the kind that come at 3 a.m. when the city finally stops pretending it is not tired, where I wondered if they were right, if the problem was not the system, if the problem was me, my refusal, my resistance, my absolute, irrational, burning inability to just settle. And I would sit with that, really sit with it, turn it over like that bent playing card, looking for the angle where it made sense, where I was the villain in my own story and not the witness. And every time, every single time, I would arrive at the same answer, quiet, certain, immovable as stone. The problem was never my refusal. The problem was that I had been in rooms that required it. So I changed the rooms, not the city, not the people entirely, not the world. I am theatrical, not delusional, just the rooms. The specific, carefully curated rooms I allowed myself to exist inside, and the people allowed inside them, and the conversations permitted to take up space in my mind after midnight. And slowly, not quickly, not cinematically, not with any of the drama you might expect from me, slowly, the weight changed, not disappeared. I am not selling you a fairy tale, but changed. The way a stone changes after years of water. Not gone, but shaped. Worn into something that fits differently in the hand. Something that no longer cuts the person holding it. And here is what I found in those new rooms. In those smaller, quieter, more honest spaces. People who did not need me to be less. People who did not flinch at the full height of me. People who looked at the sharp edges I had spent years being ashamed of and called them interesting, not despite the darkness, because of it. And that single experience of being seen without being asked to shrink first, rewired something so deep in me that I still do not have the right language for it. I only know what it felt like. It felt like a window opening in a room I had been suffocating in for 20 years. Just a crack. Just enough air to remember that breathing was supposed to feel like this. So when I look at you now, making people uncomfortable simply by becoming more honestly yourself, I do not see a problem. I see a window opening, and I know you are standing there, hand on the latch, half terrified of the cold air on the other side. Open it anyway. Not for them, not to prove something, not for any of the noble reasons people dress their decisions in when they tell the story later. Open it for the version of you that has been sitting in that room, patient, waiting, quietly running out of air. Because that version of you, the unedited one, the unmanaged one, the one that does not make sense inside someone else's story, has been waiting far longer than you realize. And it is starting to wonder, how much longer? This is the part where most people expect a conclusion, a tidy ending, a lesson wrapped in something soft enough to carry home without bleeding. I am afraid I'm going to disappoint you. Not because I am cruel. Well, not only because I am cruel, but because conclusions are for people who have finished something. And what I am describing to you, this slow, quiet, irreversible process of becoming undeniably, uncomfortably, dangerously yourself, does not conclude. It compounds. Every day you choose it, it grows heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavier with truth, lighter with everything false you are no longer required to carry. I want to talk about cost, real cost, not the poetic kind. Not the kind that sounds noble in retrospect when you are telling the story from the other side. The raw, present tense, 3 p.m. kind. When the phone is quiet and the room is still, and you realize that the life you are building toward honesty is a lonelier construction site than anyone warned you about. I lost people. I will not dress it up or minimize it or file it under necessary sacrifice to make it easier to swallow. I lost people I loved, people I had known long enough that their absence left not just a hole but a shape, a specific, irreplaceable, achingly familiar shape that nothing else has ever quite filled. And I felt it. Every single cubic inch of that shape. But here is the ethical twist. The one I saved for last. The one that will sit in the back of your mind long after this is over. The question is not whether losing them hurt. It did. The question is whether keeping them would have hurt more. Not them. You. And that is the question nobody wants to ask out loud, because asking it makes you sound selfish, makes you sound cold, makes you sound like exactly the kind of person they always quietly suspected you were becoming. But I am asking it, because someone has to. And I have long since stopped worrying about the kind of person people suspect me of being. There is a version of you that stays, that swallows the clarity, tucks it away, returns to the shape that was always more convenient, goes back to the edited laugh, the measured response, the careful performance of a person who has no edges sharp enough to make anyone bleed. I have seen that version. I have met them at dinner tables and in offices and in quiet suburban rooms that smell like compromise and air freshener. And they are not unhappy, exactly. That is the terrifying part. They are not dramatically destroyed, not visibly broken, not crying in parking lots. They are just less. A little less every year, a little more careful, a little more curated, a little further from the person they were before the world got its hands on them, and they have made peace with it, called it maturity, called it wisdom, called it understanding how the world works. I call it something else. But I am trying very hard to be kind tonight. Then there is the other version. The one that opens the window, the one that makes people uncomfortable simply by insisting on existing at full volume. That version loses things. I will not lie to you. I have never lied to you, not once in this entire conversation. That version loses things that feel, in the moment of losing them, completely unsurvivable. Relationships, approval, the warm, familiar comfort of being understood by people who have known you long enough to love the old version more than the real one. And yet, and here is the thing I need you to carry out of this room with you, that version wakes up in the morning and recognizes the face in the mirror, not perfectly, not without complexity, not without grief still living in certain corners, but recognizes it. And that recognition, that small, daily, quietly radical act of looking at yourself and not flinching, is worth more than I have words for. I have done monstrous things. I will not sit here in the dark with you and pretend otherwise. I have let the sharp edges cut people who perhaps did not deserve it. I have confused freedom with chaos on more than one occasion. I have mistaken my own anger for philosophy, dressed wounds up as wisdom and handed them to people as gifts. I know that. I carry that, not with guilt. Guilt is for people who believe they could have been different under the same conditions. With awareness. The cold, surgical, unblinking kind. The kind that does not excuse the damage but refuses to pretend the damage was the whole story. And that is what I want to leave you with. Not permission to be reckless. Not a manifesto for burning things down. Not a celebration of chaos dressed up as authenticity. I want to leave you with a distinction. The distinction between becoming yourself and becoming your worst response to the people who could not handle you. Because they are not the same. One is liberation. The other is just a different kind of prison. Louder, yes, more dramatic, certainly, but a prison all the same. The walls just have better graffiti. You are not doing anything wrong by changing. You are not betraying anyone by growing beyond the shape they assigned you. You are not obligated to remain readable to people who never bothered to learn your language. And you are not, listen to me carefully now, because this is the one I needed someone to say to me and nobody did. You are not responsible for the discomfort of people who are only uncomfortable because you stopped making yourself smaller to accommodate them. That discomfort is not your damage to repair. It is their invitation to grow, to examine, to ask themselves why your expansion feels like a personal attack. Whether they accept that invitation is entirely their business, not yours, never yours. So here I am, at the end of this, whatever this has been, confession, warning, mirror, or just the sound of someone who learned everything the hard way and developed, somehow, an irrational desire to spare you the same tuition. I look at you. Really look the way I have always looked, the way that makes people feel simultaneously seen and exposed. And I see someone standing at the exact edge of something that cannot be undone. Not a cliff, a threshold. the kind you step through and the door closes quietly behind you, and the version of you that was small enough to fit through the old frame simply ceases to exist. No funeral, no ceremony, no one throwing a parade for the self you are leaving behind. Just you, on the other side, larger, stranger, more honest than you have ever been in your life. And the only question, the only one that has ever actually mattered, is the person on the other side of that door someone the world is ready for, or just someone you finally are?